our second week of Advent Devotionals.
This week we wanted to do something a little different on our Tuesday, and maybe we'll make it a tradition, we'll see what happens. But we wanted to have a little Q&A with each other and with you guys. And so this week we're talking about hope in the prophets.
So, the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask Kalli a question first, and then she'll answer it and talk a little bit about it. And then she's going to ask me a question, and then I'll answer and I'll talk about it for a little bit. But what this is meant to be is also an opportunity for you to think about and answer these questions in your own heart. If you feel like that's a really good one, and you're watching it with people, you want to pause it and talk about it, that is A-okay. We won't be bothered because we won't know about it.
Yeah. So we're excited for you to join us, and welcome to our first double devotion.
Yeah. So I think the first question I want to ask, since we're talking about hope and the prophets, Kalli, what is your impression of the prophets of the Bible?
My impression?
Just what do you think about the prophets?
I think that they're really underestimated. I think that the prophetic books are really rich, and I just really think they're underestimated, because I think we just can glaze over the minor prophets especially, and not look into them for all the glory and little bits of the Christmas story that they hold within them.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah. Prophets, for me, it's all about the fact that they're the mouthpiece of God. I think that's a really big thing for me. The prophetic voice is actually, it's God's voice coming through us. So when we think about the books of the prophets in particular and their stories, it's actually God choosing people to send his message forth, which is kind of where we are today, where we as Christians are meant to kind of take the message of God and spread the gospel in that way.
That's really good. So for you, as you look at hope and the prophets a lot of times can be kind of hopeless. So where do you find a biblical representation of hope, and how do you hold that in the season where we already have Jesus as our living hope? How do you look and use the prophets as a tool to engage with hope?
Yeah, the tricky part for me is most of the time when I think about the word hope, I think about Jesus as our living hope, and in Romans when Paul is saying, may God fill you with hope, those are New Testament things. So when I think about the prophets and hope, I think a lot about times of despair and anguish, and times like the Israelites had it rough. I mean, they weren't being great. They were being idolatrous. They were sacrificing children. They were not great people a lot of the time. But the prophets were, and so they're in the middle of these crises, and Israel they start out enslaved actually, and then they just end up back and forth in being subject to different rulers and different kingdoms. And so I think about so many times in the Bible, hope has to be focused on God because the circumstances just don't have it. And so when I think about the prophets, they're saying, hey, Israel will be free. There will be a day when God, the day of the Lord will come. And none of them see it. Even if we count Jesus as the culmination of the promise, nobody sees it.
Not even the disciples. The disciples didn't even see it in the fullness.
Yeah. So what do you think when you think about prophets and hope?
I don't think I would have put the two together outside of Advent or this Sunday at our church. I think they did a really good job. Our church went through and they watched a Bible Project video on hope and talking about the biblical meaning of the Old Testament hope versus the new elpis, the Greek word for hope that we see in the New Testament. And so I think learning that the Old Testament hope really means waiting. First of all, waiting with looking forward to something new, and then waiting in tension until something's going to break.
Yeah.
Almost I think of farming things. If you ever had a boat that you're trying to pull the water on a cable, or a tow you're trying to pull on a cable, and that's what this hope is. This hope is that tension cable.
Yeah.
And so just learning that this week has been I think for me it's been easier for me to engage with hope, knowing that hope isn't just bright-eyed optimism, but instead hope is more of a moment in time where you are looking to something beyond yourself, or you're simply waiting in tension for something to break and move.
Yeah.
And so I think with that new light and that new perspective, I think I can look at the prophets like Isaiah, and even in like the really hard parts of Isaiah or like Ezekiel, the books that are just like the big boys, those long books. I think I can go back and look at them with more of a watchful and a listening eye versus like this is so hopeless, and see more the tension of hope, the true biblical meaning of what our English language interprets hope as. I think it'd be really interesting to see how other languages have the word hope translated from Hebrew into their language. I wonder if the Romanic languages, I wonder if like Slavic languages, I wonder if it's just English where we use hope, or if other languages might use waiting or tension in these places. Because I think that can really shift our understanding of the Bible if we understand what the Hebrew transliterated into English as hope means. So I think it's just a total shift for me in this season of Hope in the Prophets, of what actual hope that they were hoping in and the hope that we have now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think definitely. I think of Isaiah 40:31, which is those that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. They will rise on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. I think that kind of waiting, the idea is not that, the hope is, it's all glory, it's all wonderful now. It's like, okay, there will be running, and normally you would be weary if you're running. Or if you're walking normally, at some point you would grow faint, but it's the fact that you're waiting for God instead of hoping in something else that you actually have a renewal of strength.
That's good.
I think that's a good piece.
That's really good.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thank you so much for following us along this Advent season, for watching this first half of our video.
So we were watching it as we were running through to the final edits, and we're like, man, this really would be a better two-part series talking about the prophets. So this time we're kind of talking about the idea of hope in the prophets, and tomorrow we'll be digging more into our favorite stories from the prophetic books, like our highlights and how we feel like God's speaking to us through those.
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching this far. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and check us out tomorrow night for the second half of our Prophets Hope Q&A.
Woo!